We know that there are several categories of men that are exempt from going to war. Parsha Shoftim, it delineates those categories: someone who plants a vineyard but hasn't redeemed it yet, a person who built a house but hasn't lived in it yet, or a person that's engaged to a woman but hasn't fully married her yet. Those three categories, send them home exempt from going to war. There's a fourth category, a person who is faint-hearted, who's fearful, who when he hears the gunshot coming out of a canyon, or perhaps sees a dead person or the smell of blood, he runs the other way. Insecure, doesn't have the heart, doesn't have the skin for war. That person, the Torah says, we send him home. Why is that? Why don't we want that person to perhaps learn to develop a thicker skin on the battlefield? And the answer is because the Torah is teaching us that when we're on the battlefield, we can't afford to have anyone that's not fully in step with the job at hand. We can't afford to have a faint-hearted person who could potentially take away from the enthusiasm and the mission of the other soldiers. That type of negative influence we can't afford to have. And so we send that person home. How often in life do we see that our actions affect other people, and of course that other people affect our actions? How many times have we been in shul davening? We're trying to connect to Hashem, trying to daven for parnasa, for our children, for our shalom bayis, and the guy next to us pulls out his phone in the middle of davening, starts texting, starts cruising on the internet. It takes away from the ruach, it takes away from the spirit of the base measures of the shul. Or perhaps you're in an office where this office is dedicated to doing sales, and there should be a certain enthusiasm, a certain vibration in the office, and there's a guy who's sipping on his coffee, looking at the news medias, following the politics, and not really working that hard. It takes away. It takes away, it dissipates the energy in the office. We can't afford to have that in our lives. We're all on the battlefield trying to make steps along the way to fight the war, to fight the fight, to be successful Jews. Well, we see how our negative actions affect people. You can imagine our positive actions, how they could affect people. It's a story of a shoemaker that passed away named Moshe, and he went to the upstairs to the Beis Din Shamaila, and they brought out his averos and his mitzvahs on a scale, two scales. First, the mitzvahs came in, big bags of mitzvahs that he did, the charity, the learning he did, all the chesed he did, and he was all happy and lit up, and suddenly they called out for his averos, and trucks of bags came in, and he saw within a few minutes that his averos, his sins, outweighed his mitzvahs, and he says, I don't recognize all of these averos. When did I do all these sins? And of course, Hashem told him, some of these you did, but some of these you caused other people to do. And the ones that you caused other people to sin, when you spoke Lashon Hara, you made it sound like Lashon Hara was okay. When you were late to daven in shul, or you were late to meet your chavrusa, your study partner, the base measure suffered. Everyone thought it was okay to be late. 8:30 really meant 8:45. Or when you're at work and you're late and you're not working hard and you're chatting on the phone and you're not doing the job, it affects other people. Those averos are on your cheshbon, it's on your ledger. Well, imagine what we can do when we have a positive and ayin tov in the month of Elul, getting close to Rosh Hashanah, how we can be mezake, how we can influence and be mechazek. We can uplift our friends, our neighbors, our families by smiling more, by learning more, by davening better, by taking life more seriously in this very serious time of year. This is the time to become an ish, a melech, as we get closer to the melech, Kodesh Baruch Hu. It's a time for all of us to act like a melech, to step up our game, to pick up our weapons as Jews, the weapons, of course, of tefillah, of tzedakah, of Torah, be on the battlefield with Hashem and not be sent home because we're faint-hearted, because we're lazy, we're not enthusiastic. This is the time to win the war. We should all be blessed with the attitude that we can win the war, we can be good Jews this year and be inscribed in the book of life. Shabbos.